Bulls Nation. After a long, and I solely mean a long time, talking about players outside of the Chicago Bulls entering the Chicago Bulls and to see what they could be like on this team, it is finally time to talk about the Chicago Bulls as a whole, as a team in general. And today I want to talk about something that I don't feel will get enough credit going into the regular season, and maybe that will be rightfully so, but something that I think is extremely important to discuss in relation to not only being a good team, but potentially being something greater than a good team. I want to talk about the importance of having depth with the Chicago Bulls, and if we do have enough depth on a team to go and compete with the best of the best out there. So without further ado, let's talk about the Chicago Bulls and their depth in this video. Let's do it. What's going on, everybody? It's the Aidan Sports Show, and welcome back to another video. Today we've got a Chicago Bulls related video referring to the importance of the depth of the team and how important depth will be going forward for the Chicago Bulls. In the end, we're going to be talking about the bench players today, of course, the ones that have come in recently, the ones that have been on the team for quite some time, the bench options for the Chicago Bulls, and why they're extremely important to the team and the depth of having such a good bench on this team. But before we get started, please like and subscribe to the Aidan Sports Show YouTube channel. Turn notifications on and let me know in the comments below your thoughts about the Chicago Bulls and the depth of the team and how important that could be for the Chicago Bulls, and it's specifically the players that we have. Of course, depth overall is important for any team if you want to win a championship, let alone just be a good team in the NBA. Depth is a necessity for so many teams if they want to get to the highest level of the NBA, and the Chicago Bulls are a team that looks like they're trying to get to that highest level in the NBA, trying to compete for championships, trying to compete with the better teams in the East, compete with some of the teams in the West, and all of these things. It's what we want to do. That's what we aspire to do. And in order for that to happen, depth of a team is very vital for a team like the Chicago Bulls. When you look at our starting lineup, of course, naming the starting lineup, Zach LaVine, Lonzo Ball, DeMar DeRozan, Patrick Williams, Nikola Vucevic, that starting five alone could beat a lot of teams on any given night, especially comparing to other starting fives around the league. However, what makes a good team stand out from the great teams is the depth of their team. And that's exactly what we see with a bunch of teams around the league, championship teams, teams aspiring to be that. Depth is vital, and depth proves that you're ready to be a championship team. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I want to talk about the depth of this team. I want to talk about the players that we have. So we're going to only talk about the official players on the Chicago Bulls as of now. The Stanley Johnsons and all of them won't be mentioned in this video. I want to give you the bench of this team. So far, we've got Alex Caruso, new signing on the Chicago Bulls. Ayo Dosunmu, new draftee on the Chicago Bulls. Kobe White, we've seen him over the course of 2 years with the Chicago Bulls, a very good offensive player. Tony Bradley recently signed with the Chicago Bulls. Derrick Jones Jr. recently signed with the Chicago Bulls. Marko Seminovic, a draftee from the Chicago Bulls, someone we have some faith in. Javonte Green, someone we re-signed this season. We see a lot of value in him. Troy Brown Jr., one of the fan favorites for the Chicago Bulls, someone that we should definitely be considering playing in this team. Devon Dotson, two-way player, probably not going to see much of him. Alice Johnson, someone that I have a lot of faith in. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of the bench so far. And in my opinion, this is one of the better benches in the league. And of course, that could be proven over time with the games being played. But right now, we're in a situation where we have to wait weeks and potentially a month until the NBA season starts. We won't get to find out truly what this team's all about off of the bench. But the main thing you see on this bench, with the depth that we have, young, upcoming players, point to prove, desperate for opportunities. And they're definitely players that, again, don't have a lot of game time outside of their own teams. So like if you look at Tony Bradley, not much game time with the Philadelphia 76ers. Derrick Jones Jr., not much game time with the Portland Trail Blazers. You look at even players like Alice Johnson, not enough minutes on the Brooklyn Nets. You look at Troy Brown Jr., not enough minutes on the Washington Wizards. And then you look at players that are, of course, Stanley Johnson, you look at players like Tyler Cook, you look at other players around the league, and they don't get enough minutes for their teams either. Matt Thomas, another one as well. So the minutes, the intensity to prove people wrong, and having that point to prove, I think is going to be a necessity going into the Chicago Bulls, because a lot of those players have a lot of things to prove. Kobe White, someone that's been on this team for a long time. Many people want him out of the Chicago Bulls. He has something to prove coming off of this bench. Ayo Dosunmu, 37th overall pick, or 38th overall pick, 37 players picked before him, something to prove. Tony Bradley, a third choice center on the Philadelphia 76ers, something to prove. Derrick Jones Jr., little to no game time on the Portland Trailblazers, something to prove. And of course, Alice Johnson only played 18 games for the Brooklyn Nets. It's a point that needs to be proven. This team has a lot of depth. This team is very similar in what they want to do. Run out and transition, higher athletic play. Obviously, we're going to get a lot of run and gun from that system. You see Lonzo Ball working very well with the bench that we have with the Chicago Bulls and whatnot. And all of these things are really positive to see. And that's what makes us one of the best benches in the league. And they all have a point to prove to each other, have a point to prove to the fans, having a point to prove around the league for all the teams that didn't give them the opportunity. The Chicago Bulls now are going to give them an opportunity. I thought last season our bench was one of the best benches in the league. Satoransky and Thaddeus Young had a beautiful connection off of the bench. We saw at times the bench really pick things up when the starters were lackluster, and our starters weren't terrific last year. The fact that we had a bench like the Chicago Bulls bench, in my opinion, was vital, and we would have been nowhere near the play-in tournament, let alone a playoff picture, without that bench. Now we've got a bench that's very well balanced, a bench that you could hopefully rely on each other, not necessarily depend on Thaddeus Young and Satoransky. You've got 5 players out there that are going to be strong defensively, maybe outside of Kobe White, because he's going to be the main scorer. 5 guys that are going to be reliant on defense, going to push the pace in transition and get a lot of easy buckets. And of course, the depth is beautiful because we will have starters playing for this team as well. So it's not like you're going to see, oh, where's the scoring going to come from? Why can't we score threes? Why is it always run and gun transition? We're not always going to have that reality when it comes to this team. For example, everyone thinks DeMar DeRozan is someone that's going to play with this bench. You could potentially see Nikola Vucevic play for this bench. You could potentially see Kobe White maybe join the starters here and there. Maybe Ayo could be the same. The reality is, it's important to note that there are a lot of players in positions that can help the Chicago Bulls off of this bench, and the starters will help the bench as well. And this is why the bench is going to be extremely important for the Chicago Bulls going forward, because the rotation of this team is reliant on the bench doing well and the starters joining the bench and having chemistry there. It feels great to see that. I truly feel like for the first time in a long time, we have a team where if one player's out, the next player's up and he can do a job better than anybody. And that's exactly what I love. I love to see a team that's solely a team. For example, if you have Lonzo Ball that goes out for an injury for a week or two, yeah, you put Kobe White in that lineup and it doesn't feel like we've lost a whole lot. And same if you put maybe Ayo Dosunmu in the starting lineup for a game, or you bring Ayo Dosunmu off of the bench now with Kobe White starting and things like that. It's not a terrible thing to see. And the fact of the matter is, now we've got depth in so many positions that it's going to be like a proper team performance here. We're not going to rely on, if Zach LaVine is out, our whole world comes crumbling down. It's not going to be like that this season. I truly believe that. And hopefully that can be proven right. And hopefully that's something that we can see throughout the course of the year, when the depth turns into proper help for the Chicago Bulls. And a lot of LeBron James fans talks a lot about how LeBron doesn't always have the help he needs to win championships, how some players don't have the help they need to win championships. Damian Lillard is another example of a player that doesn't always get the help they need to win championships. The Chicago Bulls now have, in my opinion, a bench good enough to provide help for the Chicago Bulls when they're looking to and fighting to battle for the top teams and potentially championships down the line. This bench we can look at and we could say, this is a pretty good bench, a good, young, athletic bench with a massive point to prove across all the positions there. And the starting lineup also has that point to prove. We're coming into this season with a massive point to prove to the rest of the league. You doubt our, I guess, fit together. We have a point to prove to show that our fit is going to be good with the Chicago Bulls. People doubt our bench, doubt our scoring. We're going to have a point to prove there as well. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect. In fact, it might be far from perfect, but the reality is, on paper, when you look at players like Aidan, Kobe White, Tony Bradley, Derrick Jones, Alex Caruso, Troy Brown Jr., Javonte Green, players that we're really high on at the moment. And again, Alice Johnson as well is coming into this team. These are players we all have a little bit of faith in when it comes to entering this season. We have faith in these players, and hopefully these players can stand up and deliver and show that we will have one of the better benches in the league, and especially defensively as well. Let's not forget, defensively, we were one of the worst teams in the NBA last year, and I'll never, ever, ever say otherwise. I don't care who you put into this team last year, no matter how good of a solid defender one individual was in the team. Defensively as a whole, we were terrible defensively, and that's exactly how we lost so many of the bulk of the games the Chicago Bulls played. It was defensive liabilities. It was turning the ball over and not being able to defend our own mistakes. This is something I also see being a massive improvement. When you add Lonzo Ball into the team, Patrick Williams coming into the starting lineup, Aidan, Tony Bradley, Derrick Jones Jr., again, Alice Johnson, so many players, Troy Brown Jr., so many players, so much depth. It's going to be difficult to play every single player on the bench guaranteed minutes, and that's something that unfortunately it's the benefit of having a good team situation. The best part of, I guess, a coach's job is to have good problems, and good problems like who should play minutes is something a coach should always want to have, because that means there are players, quality players on the bench that are looking for the step up, and there are quality players that are playing on the court that are looking to keep their spot. It's a good thing to have, and that's why I feel depth is important for the Chicago Bulls, and that's also why I feel like this depth is going to be very valuable for the Chicago Bulls. Once again, it's not perfect. I'm not going to ever say it's perfect. If you're asking me, I would have loved a little bit more experience on the team. Again, we have a very young bench, all things considering. I think Javonte Green is 28 years old, and he is our, I guess, oldest bench player. You'd like to see a little bit of more experience. Thaddeus Young would have been perfect. I think if you put Thaddeus Young on this team once again, he would have been absolutely perfect for the team. If we never got rid of Thaddeus Young, then I think this team off the bench would be fantastic. Unfortunately, things don't always go in that direction, but I think the Chicago Bulls have signed players to kind of build up the bench and build up the quality and to build up the two-way ability of the team, and I can't wait to see how that goes on the court. So ladies and gentlemen, this is my video about the depth of the Chicago Bulls. We have a youthful bench, a bench with a point to prove, and if you're asking me, most players on this bench, I feel a lot of people have a lot of faith in, and let's see if those opportunities that they didn't get elsewhere, they can get here and prove to us and prove to the world why they deserve to have these minutes. And that's exactly what a bench should be. A team with a point to prove, players with points to prove, players that want to start in this league, and players that are going to go out there and just do everything they can to help us win games. And that's exactly what I want to see on this team. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe if you're new. We all talk about the depth of the team and how valuable depth is to the Chicago Bulls. Let's not forget, we have Stanley Johnson, Ethan Thompson, Tyler Cook, Matt Thomas. We have non-guaranteed players right now fighting for two positions, the last position on the team and a two-way contract. There are 2 spots left for the Chicago Bulls to be filled to prove even more depth for our team. The depth is not gone yet, ladies and gentlemen. There are still more additions that could be made, and that is also a big positive we look into when we talk about having important depth and having a very good bench. And hopefully this bench can prove to the rest of the league that we are that good, and hopefully when we have starters that potentially get injured, and it's always a possibility, God forbid it happens, but there is always a possibility of injuries. Let's hope that this bench can make up for those things. And again, this is what a long NBA season is all about. It's not always the starters that are going to win you games at times. When things are going your way or when things are going wrong, the bench can be the one to save a team. And let's see if the Chicago Bulls bench can be one to do that. Have a wonderful and safe day, Bulls Nation. I'll see you in another Chicago Bulls video. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay tuned for more. Take care and peace.